I should unmute myself.
Good evening. My name is Kent Wong. I'm the director of the UCLA Labor Center, and we want to welcome you to tonight's Labor's Voice. This is a joint program between the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor and the UCLA Labor Center to bring critical information about the labor movement during the time of the COVID-19 crisis. To start off the evening's program, we are really thrilled to have two extraordinary musicians, Cesar Castro and Xochitl Flores. They're with the band Cambalache, and they are a community-based, popular musicians who have played such a meaningful role in bringing the spirit of struggle, of solidarity to our community. So please welcome Cesar and Xochitl.
Thank you. Thank you, Kent.
Gracias.
Thank you, everybody, for having us. We are, like Kent said, members of Cambalache. We know that music has the capacity to bring us all together, to ground us in this convening, even though we can't be together physically. There are ways to bring us together. So we're going to play. I invite you all to do some kind of movement. So like it's a count of three. So 1, 2, 3. You can do 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, whatever feels right for you. Stomp your feet. But we're gonna all do something together that makes us, feel warm and feel grounded and feel like we're in the same space together. Okay. All right. 1, 2, 3.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cesar and Xochitl and Cambalache. We are thrilled to have you with us tonight, and your spirit and your energy lifts us all. So once again, welcome to Labor's Voice, the right to recall and retention. This is an ongoing series that will be hosted by the UCLA Labor Center and the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor to bring highlights of major work that the labor movement is doing in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. What is labor doing to defend worker rights? What is it doing to provide community services, to fight for policy change, and to improve the lives of workers? And as I said, we just secured a major victory for the right to recall and retention that was won through the concerted efforts of unions and workers right here in Los Angeles. And so I wanted to first welcome the president of the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor, Ron Herrera. Ron Herrera has recently stepped up to the role of president of LA Fed, and he is clearly risen to the challenge. And this is called baptism by fire, because he never would have imagined when he agreed to assume leadership at the Fed that we would be facing such a huge crisis within our community. And he has really risen to that challenge. So please welcome Ron Herrera.
Thank you, Kent. Appreciate it. Proud I'm here. I'm glad I'm here with you.
That's great. So Ron, I just wanted for you to highlight some of the major activities that the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor is doing in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis.
You know, I wish I could tell you that we had a well drawn out plan, but obviously, you know, this is something that came upon us, you know, quickly. But luckily for us, Kent, we had already started building up and establishing labor community services. And with that said, I'm talking about January 1st. So trial under fire, that's an understatement. So we had like 2 months to do all this. But luckily, as I said, we were gearing up through our executive action, you know, through our executive board, through a transition team that we had put together, and most of our affiliates that were involved in it. In fact, strike that. All the affiliates that were on this transition team, and obviously the executive board, were all in favor of redeveloping labor community services, and that was a godsend. I mean, looking at it, you know, 3 months back, had the executive board not had the leadership to do that, I don't know where we would be, because labor community services took off running, you know, 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago, and we haven't looked back since.
I really wanted to commend you on that though, Ron, because I remember having these conversations with you long before COVID-19, and your commitment to rebuild labor community services as a critical arm to support workers in need here in Los Angeles County. So tell me a little about what brought you to that decision on why we needed labor community services even before the COVID-19 crisis.
Because normal to me in Los Angeles doesn't work. We have the opportunity now to create a new normal. But I mean, there were people, you know, struggling prior to COVID-19, and all COVID-19 did was it showcased, you know, the need in the community. So what we did, we started off, you know, with subsistence, just basic food. We built a plan around that, but certainly it doesn't stop there. You know, we have to get through this obviously first, but our goals back then, our planning, our strategy was to be in the community, both in aid, education, but also social activity, meaning if we had to be activists within the community, then that's what we were going to be. If we were going to take a controversial stance on social issues, we were going to do it. Luckily, as I said, not being repetitive, we established a base. Even though, you know, it's a 2-month base, it was a base enough to put us in a situation that we were able to help a lot of people. It's amazing the amount of families and that we've been able to feed, both in a drive-up type food distribution, and this past Saturday in a walk-up at the Federation in Pico Union. And it was interesting because the staff has just been amazing. They've been off the charts. This doesn't happen unless you have a staff that's driven and truly believes in what they're doing. But we couldn't decide, do we you know, get 1,000 bags prepared, you know, that seemed like a lot, no, maybe 1,200. We ended up with 2,000. Well, there's not one bag left at the Federation. And the community came out, and we ended up giving out 2,000 bags of food that day, as well as, some basic necessities. We had, luckily, one of our affiliates, Teamsters Local 630, was able to get milk, and we gave out milk. But the big thing is that Labor Community Services is that arm of the movement. I mean, that's our signature. And if we're going to be in the community, then we have to have a strong presence through our nonprofit there at the Federation.
That's great. I mean, what's extraordinary about your work at the LA Fed is that, in my view, it really embodies the spirit of social justice unionism. It sees that unions are a vital force in the community, not only to fight for the bread and butter issues that the 800,000 union members of the LA Fed confront, but it also fights for racial justice. It fights for immigrant rights. It fights for women's rights. And at this time of critical need, it also is providing the basic sustenance that are keeping our communities afloat. And so you represent 800,000 union members here in Los Angeles County. You represent dozens of unions. How do you get all those unions to work together and to sit at the same table and to cooperate?
Look, leaders rise to the top during adversity, and that's what the LA labor movement has done. I feel that the labor movement here in Los Angeles, specifically the Federation, with all its partners, community, and other unions, some that aren't even affiliated. We established ourselves as the #1 movement in the country. I've actually sat on panels with major cities, CLCs and federations, and they're all curious as to how we did this. Well, you do this through participation, for caring, for donating. The affiliates have been incredible as far as funding labor community service, because obviously budget is the foremost thing that we start with. And the generosity that our affiliates have shown to the need and pain of union members in the community, because we started out, our mission, our message was union members helping union members. We had massive layoffs the first and second week of the pandemic, when the stay-at-home orders hit, and we knew that basic subsistence was important. So our partnerships, right, our relationships in the community and in private business were really, really important. We have union employers that have stepped up. We've had other nonprofits that have stepped up financially for us. So we definitely are a model of a coalition partnership that is just amazing. And we're the foundation of that is just generosity and need. And the LA labor movement has really shown the general public, and hopefully Washington, D.C., that they're in trouble here coming a few months, because we plan to use this energy and use it on behalf of all workers in the next couple of months, in the coming years.
Thank you. What you said is true, that the work of the LA Fed really is a national model, that you work very closely with the mayor's office, you work very closely with the governor's office, and as the second largest central labor council in the country, you are now a model for central labor councils all across the country who see the impact of the Los Angeles labor movement. But you mentioned this thing about preparing for the November mobilization. And why is it so important for unions right here in Los Angeles to get engaged in political fights and to engage in policy change?
When the stay-at-home orders hit, obviously we, even though being an essential institution, we're still all working remotely. But our political department hasn't skipped a beat. Our policy staff, Rob Notoff, who you'll hear from later, has just been off the charts working with the political department. We still continue to organize through innovative methods right now. We're talking to workers. Obviously, you know, when the pandemic hit, we have massive layoffs in hospitality, and then, you know, the grocery issue, the grocery stores came up. So those were big issues right out of the box. But protective equipment PPE was the mainstream issue, right? The conversation, protecting workers. So we got on that immediately. But one of the things, Kent, that I want to showcase is that we've built a volunteer army. And we have, in our food drives, we have up to 200 volunteers, 100 to 150, 200 people volunteering out there, risking their own health to help people. And it's all a result of people wanting to give back, our affiliates wanting to give back. And, you know, my hat's off to some of the union members, specifically HERE Local 11 Unite Here. Their members are laid off, but yet they're working our food distribution lines. And, you know, that in itself, that depicts the strength and character of the Los Angeles labor movement. When when somebody themselves is out of work, but is giving back to people like themselves.
That's amazing. And just to see the level of cooperation and unity among unions and workers here in Los Angeles in this time of crisis is amazing, because unions represent the healthcare workers who are putting their lives at risk every day. They represent the supermarket workers who are feeding our communities. They represent you know, the workers at the LA airport. They represent the janitors. They represent the home care workers. They represent the construction workers. They represent the frontline workers who are playing such a critical role during this time. And it's that unity which has been so powerful. So thank you so much for joining us, Ron. We will look forward to continue to see you on the front lines of struggle in building this very robust movement. And we wanted to close this segment with Ron Herrera with a short video clip that shows the power of labor coming together for food distribution programs that have been held throughout the city of Los Angeles and the county of Los Angeles. So hope you enjoy this short clip.
Union members here participating and volunteering their time, you know, a touch of my heart to be able to do this community service. It makes me feel good and proud to be a 31-year Teamster, being on this side of the line, being able to help people. This is hard and difficult times that we've never been through. And, you know, I just want people in the community to understand that we're all in this together.
This is Eric Hoffman, President of the Utility Workers Union of America, Local 132, and we are Union Strong.
That's great. And that was so inspiring, seeing that video and watching the hundreds of union volunteers on the front lines providing the service to our community. We're really excited tonight to have join us Susan Minato, who is one of the co-presidents of the Hotel Workers Local 11, and Walter Almendarez, one of the staunch leaders and activists of Local 11. And many unions have had a very difficult time here in Los Angeles, but I can't think of a single one who's had it more difficult than the Hotel Workers Local 11. So I first wanted to welcome Susie Minato tonight and have her talk a little about what the hotel workers are facing during this crisis.
Good evening. Thank you, Kent. We Unite Here Local 11 is a local that represents 32,000 people, all in the hospitality industry, which means hotels and sports arenas, entertainment venues, theme parks, airports, cafeteria, in movie studios, universities. And you guys all know that during this pandemic, every single aspect of entertainment and hospitality is closed right now. And so we have gone from 32,000 members down to 2,000 members. So we lost 30,000 people in 1 month. And it is kind of an unbelievable time. You know, the workers that we represent are, you know, pretty much paycheck to paycheck. I would say probably in the range of 60 to 70% immigrant. Many with families and kids. And so people are hit very, very hard. One of the things that we decided to do as soon as we started getting word about how serious this was, you know, going to be, was that we decided that we would phone call every single member. And so we put the entire staff on, administrative people, organizers, everybody, on calling all 32,000. And as you can imagine, we heard unbelievable pain and heard unbelievable stories of bravery, however, and people just really willing to, you know, stand up to whatever is thrown their way. So we had all of our leaders, chief shop stewards and committee leaders come forward right away and begin to also be calling those 32,000 people. And we were answering questions just about really everything. And, you know, even though we didn't have answers for everyone, of course, we had each other. So that was a really big deal. And the primary thing that we wanted to make sure that people were comfortable with was to apply for their unemployment, because obviously in these times, even that little bit helped. So people are still struggling with it right now and still have not received all of their unemployment checks yet. But, and then, you know, as Ron detailed earlier, food was a really critical thing. So we did a really, you know, we're still doing it, you know, doing a really good job of advertising the LA Federation's food banks. And I have heard, you know, many stories, but Ron specifically, I remember telling me at the biggest distribution of more than 8,000, there were still people coming up to him begging for food. And so it's a pretty serious, you know, situation. The union.
That's great,
also,
Susan, that, you know, Local 11 in the midst of this crisis is stepping up and continuing to organize and mobilize your membership. So that is amazing. I know that not only have you addressed the food needs of your own members, but you've also entered into a novel agreement with the city of Los Angeles to mobilize your members to help the elderly and food insecure throughout Los Angeles. Could you tell me about that program?
Yes, that is a really, we're very proud of this. This is something we call Serving Our Community. It's an initiative where, you know, we really view it as sort of a repurposing of those hospitality jobs I was talking about, where people who are professionals, they work in huge kitchens like the JW Marriott, the Bonaventure, USC, all these big kitchens, and they can stay socially distanced apart. And cook food for the relief. So seniors in need who can't get out of their homes anymore due to the virus. And they're delivered by taxi cabs who are, you know, really down and out as well right now. And we're just hoping that this, you know, this is a really an interesting initiative that continues, just because we've gotten about 100, just a little over 100 people back to work, and about 119 people can produce 32,000 meals a week by our group. And so we think that's a really valuable thing. It's not huge yet, but we're hoping that it continues.
That's amazing. Well, I really hope that we can build on this as a model, not only for others here in Los Angeles to replicate, but also for other cities to replicate, because I think it's a great way of getting hotel workers back to work, but also providing a critical need. The hotel workers, the LA Fed, and SEIU, among others, won a huge policy victory before LA City Council just a couple weeks ago. Tell me about that.
Yeah, this is the whole area around job security. So, we're doing all these really good things at this moment, but the most important thing is that people can go back to work. That is the most important thing. These are people who have worked for, 10, 20, 30 years in different jobs. And so the right to go back to work was the law that was passed in the LA City Council. And I'd like to introduce Walter Armond, who is a worker here in Los Angeles, who helped hand in hand with us to go fight for that law. So Walter, did you want to tell a little bit about your story?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. My name is Walter Armond. I worked at Chateau Marmont for 23 years. As everybody know that, we got fired on March 19 by a basic email. That was it. We didn't have, we don't have insurance, health insurance. We don't have anything. Right now, thanks to the local Union 11, their support, like Ken said, we just passed this policy that secure our job back. I know I have a lot of coworkers that been there for 43 years, some more than 40. These friends are about 66, 62 years old. We were worried before this law because we didn't have any job secure. They just fired us with the email, and that was it.
Thank you for sharing that story, Walter. I mean, it's so tragic when workers who have dedicated 10, 20, 30, sometimes 40 years to a company, and the company can treat them so callously and just fire them on the spot. And so this was a huge victory and breakthrough for the hotel workers to secure this victory. So what does it mean to you personally, Walter, though, to have the right of recall and retention that was won?
It make me happy because, I'm pretty sure the owner was not going to hire me back. I know that for a fact. Now, as I'm happy and my coworkers are happy that he like it or not, I'm gonna have to be there and perform my best at the chateau. But I'm really happy because, like I say, it's not only my hotel that my coworkers that are happy, and I know there's other people that are so happy that this policy went through, because now they have more relief knowing that they're going back to work when this crisis is over. Mm-hmm. Like before we didn't know, so we were worried, especially my coworkers that they're older. But I'm really happy for the support that Local 11 has given us and all the whole community. This was a tough one, but this was one for a bunch of people that want to help.
That's great, Walter. And we're so proud of you for leading that fight and to lifting up your voice to not only represent the interests of workers at your hotel, but the interests of hotel workers all over the city. And as we know, frequently these hotel corporations, they don't do the right thing. When they have a massive layoff like this, they'll use that as a pretext to downgrade the wages, the benefits, and to bust the union. And so this was a huge victory that the hotel workers won. And people are tracking what's happening here in Los Angeles all across the country. And so what you have won here, Walter, for the hotel workers here, people around the country are going to be following. So thank you so much, Susan Minato and Walter Armond, for joining us. We have a few slides we just wanted to share with you of Local 11 in action, and then we're going to move on to our next speaker. So let's show a few of the slides, and then we'll move on to our next speaker.
There might be a glitch.
Okay. So Susan, you want to describe some of these slides we're seeing?
Yes, I think that one, these are all food bank shots of our volunteers. This one is a big action at the terminal, at the American terminal at LAX. This one is another food bank at the Hospitality Training Academy. This is back to LAX, and this is really important because as the city was asked, there I am, as the city was asked to lower rents and to have the concessionaire save money during this terrible time, the city made sure that workers were going to get some of that relief as well. So those actions depicted some of the work we've done.
That's great. And it's always so inspiring seeing the Unite Here Local 11 workers on the streets. They organize some of the best rallies and demonstrations in town. And we look forward to that again very soon.
Thank you.
Our next speaker tonight, thank you so much, Susan and Walter, for joining us. Our next speaker tonight is the president of the Service Employees International Union, United Service Workers West, better known as the Justice for Janitors Union. They've played a legendary role. And this coming month marks the 30th anniversary of the beating of janitors in Century City that resulted in a multi-million-dollar lawsuit victory for the Justice for Janitors, but more importantly, a huge breakthrough in successfully reorganizing the janitorial industry right here in Los Angeles. And so I'm so proud to introduce my good friend and one of the most dynamic labor leaders of Los Angeles, David Huerta. So David, if you could please tell me about how your union is addressing the COVID-19 crisis.
Sure. Thank you, Kent, for having me today. And I'd also like to give a big shout out to HERE, Susan Minato, and Walter, as well as the LA Fed and Ron, because you guys are doing amazing work, and I really appreciate you guys. You know, Ken, as you know, our organization's 48,000 members from Sacramento all the way to San Diego. We are passenger service workers, janitors, security officers, as well as even retail workers and public event workers. And you know, when this whole thing started, as Susan and everyone else, it really was a shock to many of us. We had to really, it was unprecedented what we had to really respond to. Unfortunately, from the start of the COVID-19 crisis to the current day, we have lost about 13,000 members as a result of the shutdown of the sports, the stadium and arena events, as well as the passenger service workers who have been hit hard. But you know, we've been working really hard to really capture the essential work that our members do as janitors and security officers, and who clean retail stores, and who provide service for passenger service workers. These workers are on the front lines in many ways, in our hospitals, in our commercial real estate buildings, in the high tech and biotech. They're in all parts of our economy, and they're going every day to work, taking that risk like everyone else, you know, who's an essential worker right now, taking that risk, opening that door and going out to work. And we're doing everything we can to be able to support them in that effort, because it's, you know, it's had its consequences as well. We have had a couple members die as a result of COVID-19. We've had members who have caught COVID-19 and family members who have died. And so, you know, although they are, you know, they are doing what they have to do in order to do their part, in order to make sure that in their service as essential workers, that they're doing everything they can to combat COVID-19.
Thank you, David. And I really do want to, you know, lift up the extraordinary sacrifice that so many workers on the front lines engage in every single day. And the work of the union, not only to, you know, defend their wages and working conditions, but to make sure that the work environment is safe in a time when many of the corporate leaders have tremendous disregard for worker safety and health at this time. And so the union plays such a critical role in fighting for health and safety. You know, I know that the janitors and the USWW have been gearing up for a big contract fight. So what is the status of that currently?
Well, you know, I wish I had better news to report on that. You know, our contract was supposed to expire April 30th. You know, that date just passed several days ago. You know, we were at the bargaining table, literally at the bargaining table, when basically the shelter and orders took place. Because of those orders, we extended or not extended, we submitted bargaining for a minimum period about 2 to 3 weeks, and then talked to our bargaining committee as well as our executive board on how do we approach the moment we're in. So, you know, we had to basically take that contract right now that we're gearing up to get pension benefits. We were gearing up to rebuild our pension, to get significant wage increases, to really make have a big impact on the lives of our members. But like I said, because of the COVID-19, the stay in shelter, it really hindered our ability to be able to negotiate. So we decided to negotiate an extension for 1 year. There is some silver lining in that. One, we protected the healthcare benefits for our members for over the course of that year, no cost to them. We also extended the healthcare benefits for our members through our trust fund in order to be able to ensure that those workers who have lost their jobs and who are benefited through the trust fund can maintain their healthcare. We also ensured that if there's a minimum wage increase in the city or in the state, our members will also get an increase regardless of their wages across the state. We also fought for an extension of the right of recall, and we also negotiated the California Work Share program, which was to mitigate the impact of job losses in janitorial, which has mitigated it significantly. Out of 20,000 janitors that we have in the state of California, we have seen 1,200 workers being laid off out of 20,000, which is not a bad situation. We have seen several thousands more now, though, get their hours cut from 8 to 5.5 hours through the California Work Share program. But those workers are eligible to be able to supplement their pay through the state of California through unemployment, and the employers have to guarantee health care during the time that they're under the California Work Share program. But the one silver lining that we have, and I'm excited about, is that when we go back to the table next year, we're going to go back to the table at the same time as security officers are going back to the table. So that means we're going to be thousands of security officers and janitors fighting side by side for new contracts at the same time. And we'll also be fighting for a new contract at Disneyland in 2021 as well, during the same time as a janitorial contract. So if anything, the silver lining is that we're going to be able to combine all of our efforts in 3 major contracts and really bring all those workers together to demand respect, dignity, and justice.
That's amazing to hear, because I know that when you can align contracts like that, it only builds the strength of the workers together who are going to be fighting for better wages and better benefits at the very same time. And the other thing that's so remarkable, even in spite of the COVID-19 crisis, that what the janitors and USWW has won historically, which is full family medical benefits for union members, which is not common in the general public. As you know, that you are still fighting to maintain that at a time when workers need health benefits more than ever. So I really applaud your work, David, and the work of the USWW in continuing to fight for your workers. Could you talk a minute more, though, about how your members are being impacted by the worker recall and retention victory that was won in the Los Angeles City Council?
Well, Ken, the way we like to look at our industry is we don't really distinguish between union and non-union workers. We try to advocate for an industry as a whole. And the biggest victory we feel, not just it's not just for union members, but it's not just janitorial workers in the union, but it's really for workers as a whole in our industry. Because historically our industry has been it's been part of the underground economy. Employers have exploited workers based on their status, and it's at the early part of this of our history. And you mentioned this as a 30-year. We're celebrating 30 years this year as of the history of justice for janitors. But it's taken us 30 years to get the justice and dignity and respect that we deserve. And we felt it was very, very important to be able to have worker retention for all workers, especially the janitorial workers in the union shops, but also the non-union shops, because they have worked so hard to raise the standard of those jobs. So those jobs are good paying jobs, that those jobs have health care, that those jobs have vacation, sick pay, You know, they have, you know, holidays, the whole 9 yards, right? And it's important that the workers who built those standards are also the workers that go back to those standards when our economy recovers. And we really, you know, it was really in 2000, during the Great Recession, we saw the industry itself go make a race to the bottom, in the sense of like, it was really driven by the economic recession. And we saw a lot of people laid off during that time that really impacted, and there was no resources to protect those folks, because jobs were we were losing jobs as a result of the economy. But the good thing here, and the result of the work with the HERE and the result of the work with the LA Fed, is those workers now know that they have a job that they come back to, and they can start back where they left off, and to continue to fight to raise the standards in the janitorial industry and the commercial real estate industry. So we're very proud of the work that's happened.
That's great. That's amazing work, David. My last question is that, looking forward, how do you see the role of the Service Employees International Union, United Service Workers West, in relation to the economic recovery? What role do you see the union playing as part of that recovery process?
Well, I would say first and foremost, we got to really take stock of the fact that the essential worker needs to be taken care of when we come back into our economy. We cannot go backwards. I look at our janitorial workers no longer as just cleaners. They are they're environmental workers. They are folks who are now protecting the public health, right? Because the reality we know about this virus is that the virus does live a certain amount of time on hard surfaces. If you don't have a cleaner there cleaning that hard surfaces, that means that those folks who are exposing themselves or touching those hard surfaces are at risk of contracting this virus. So we need to make sure that janitors, or not janitors, but essential workers, and that essential worker means the delivery guy. That means the person who's cleaning your offices. That means the person who's going to be cleaning the housekeeper. That means the person who's doing all the essential work. And understand this, those essential workers are majority people of color. And we already seen the statistics right now. What's coming out is that people of color are ones being hardest hit with COVID-19, with unemployment and death rates, because of the conditions they have been working in, and the preconditions that have existed prior to the COVID-19. So we need to make sure that we put pressure on big business, that we do not go back to the old model of taking advantage of workers. And we need to treat them with the dignity and respect that they deserve as essential workers. 1, 2, we need to make sure that there is a union for all access to all workers. All you workers have a right to be a part of a union. I don't care what your status is. I don't care what language you speak. I don't care any of that. All workers have a right to be part of a union, and we have to make that demand out and clear. We have to rebuild our healthcare system in this country. We need to make sure that part of what COVID-19 has exposed, it's the greatest equalizer of our time, but in its impact, it's also demonstrated the deficiencies and the history of racism in this country. And we need to correct that. And we need to make sure all workers have access to healthcare. And we need to make sure that all people have access to shelter in place. People right now are 30 days from being evicted from their homes. And people need to have shelter. People need to have rent, justice in their rents. And then last of all, we need to fight for comprehensive immigration reform, because the injustice that's been done with the immigrant community is I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed that the way we treat our immigrant people in this country, and it's wrong. And we need to correct that injustice, and we need to fight for immigration for all.
Thank you, David Huerta and SEIU USWW. That is a model of social justice unionism that fights for all workers, that all people of color, all immigrants, and fights for a better life for everyone. So we really look forward to your continued success. We're gonna now queue up a few slides from the Service Employees International Union. But as we do, I just wanted to announce that David Huerta and I have a brand new book coming out this summer on Mike Garcia, the legendary leader of the Justice for Janitors Union, who led this union for 20 years and did extraordinary work. And so we are so proud of this new publication that will honor the legacy of Mike Garcia. And thank you, David, for your work on this publication. So can we cue up some of the slides? And David, you can tell us what we're seeing.
So this was our kickoff for our contract campaign. And we really wanted to really land the conversation around janitors sweeping out. Of course, we're janitors, so we sweep, but sweeping out fascism, racism, and sexism, because we think we need to have a loud voice that is, it's not just enough to demand better wages and healthcare and whatnot, but we also have to demand a democracy that speaks for all of us.
That's great. So those are very inspiring signs of the leaders of SEIU USWW in action. And we look forward to the day soon when we'll be able to join those marches with them on the streets.
Yep. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too, man. I'm desperate to go out there and do some picketing because it's long overdue, but we'll get there. We just have to make sure that we arrive there united.
Great. Thank you so much, David Huerta. Our final speaker this evening is Rob Notoff, who is the political director of the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor. The LA Fed, as they're known, has emerged as the single most important political force in the state of California that has fundamentally shifted the political makeup of the state of California. And so there is no accident that we have supermajorities in both the state Senate and the state Assembly, that we have every single statewide office held not only by a Democrat, but by a pro-worker, pro-union Democrat. And much of that credit goes to the work of the LA County Federation of Labor. And I wanted to introduce the political director, Rob Notoff. So Rob, this is the point of the agenda where we talk about the call to action. So what is it that all the people who are listening and streaming on Facebook, what is it that we can do to continue the fight that is being led by the LA labor movement?
Well, thank you for the introduction there, Kent. And I just wanted to, in answer to your question, before we even dive into that, I just wanted to maybe take a couple of steps back and get everybody in their own mind to go back in time to 8 weeks ago when this pandemic hit. And when we were in unprecedented times and nobody knew what to do, as President Herrera said, we didn't have a manual or a script that we could fall back to. But all that we knew was that if we wanted to do something in these times, it's time to go big or go home. And so when we dug into the right of recall and worker retention policies, as you've just heard from Walter and his compañera who's been on several calls, Raquel Lezama from the Mr. C's Hotel, and from Susan and David and everybody else at Unite Here Local 11 and SEIU USWW, we moved forward with the right of recall and retention policy in the city of Los Angeles. And when we did it, and when we passed it 2 weeks ago, we literally changed the game and made history in these unprecedented times. It wasn't easy to do. And again, it was a lot of hard work, mostly from again, the folks who mentioned, and Walter and Raquel coming out there and speaking their truth and sharing their stories and speaking truth to power and winning over that internal consciousness, that internal battle that's within our elected officials to make sure that they did right by hearing those stories from Walter and Raquel and hearing those stories to move them to action. And again, by doing so, we made history. And when we passed the policy in the city of Los Angeles, the National AFL actually reached out, and one, couldn't believe that we had conceptualized this kind of an idea, and two, couldn't believe that we had actually passed it. And it doesn't just stop there, because tomorrow, May 12th, we're on the verge of making history again. And I'm not talking too big pie in the sky when I say we're making history. I mean that. I mean that we're on the verge of making history. We've got votes beginning tomorrow morning at the LA County Board of Supervisors at 9:30 a.m. who will vote on the same kind of policy to make sure that workers in the janitorial and hospitality industries are protected. And later on tomorrow night, the city of Long Beach will also be trying to pass and looking to pass a similar ordinance. So when we started this, it's like a small fire and it's starting to catch across just the region. But not only that, other cities are trying to duplicate this, and it's potentially a model that could be used across the nation for everybody to follow up with. And as we're talking about opening up our economy, and we're seeing protests from other folks, and we're seeing folks who want to get out there and begin to restart the economy, what better policy can you have than to ensure that workers who had a job in the first place have a job waiting for them at the end of when the economy does begin to restart? And as David and Susan and Walter and everybody have talked about, when we talk about this industry, it's particularly helpful for working men and women of color who overwhelmingly make up these two industries. And as David mentioned earlier, when we're talking about who's getting hit the hardest within this pandemic, it's communities of color who are represented by the types of folks who are in these industries that we're talking and looking to protect and move forward with tomorrow's vote. And I would also highlight, as David and Susan mentioned, the jobs that we're talking about here in Los Angeles. The other reason why this is so historic, and Kent, you touched on this at the very beginning of this call here. Los Angeles, when we talk about thinking big, 30 years ago, Los Angeles questioned the nation and said, why can't a hotel keeper or a housekeeper be a good job? Who said it can't be? And why can't a janitor be a good living wage job? Who's anyone to tell us that it can't be? And me being a native of Detroit, where you had manufacturing and the birthplace of the labor movement, the same thing was said 100 years ago with manufacturing jobs, and nowadays nobody questions that. So when we pass this policy tomorrow at the Board of County, at the LA County Board of Supervisors, and at the City of Long Beach, we are also preserving the blood, sweat, and tears that went into making these jobs in the city of Los Angeles into good living wage jobs that allow people to put food on the table, a little more milk in the fridge, and to be able to sustain their families. So we preserve that legacy. We preserve the blood, sweat, and tears of Mike Garcia, whose book you authored with David. We preserve the legacy of Maria Elena Durazo, a just fierce champion warrior for labor. So when we move forward with this, we preserve all of that. So it's time to move forward with this. Our folks on this call and listening in with me, and are you willing to fight to make sure that we preserve this stuff and that we actually lead the nation and teach the nation on how to come out of this recovery without going backwards, and actually preserving and continuing that foundation that's been laid for us, and making sure we can build forward as we move forward. It's a new foundation upon which to build forward with. And all we're asking for is for folks to simply follow what's on your screen, link into 2 different petitions where you can simply sign up and say that you support these policies to both the City of Long Beach and the LA County Board of Supervisors. And it'll take 2 minutes of your time to preserve 30 years of history here in the city of Los Angeles. So with that, we thank you. We look forward to making history, and we look forward to continuing to lead the way. So thank you, everybody.
Rob, that was a great pitch, and we can make history tomorrow in the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors, in Long Beach City Council. And if everybody listening to this broadcast will take 1 or 2 minutes and make those calls, together we can make history. So I really thank you for your leadership, Rob. I thank you for your leadership, Ron Herrera, for Walter, for Susan Minato, for David Huerta. And together, the labor movement is making history. In the coming weeks, Labor's Voice will be addressing many other groups of workers in Los Angeles, including the United Food and Commercial workers, including the Amazon workers, including the Uber and Lyft drivers, including the Black Worker Center, including our construction workers, including our entertainment union workers, all of the unions of Los Angeles, all of the worker centers, all of the workers of color and immigrant workers of Los Angeles are rising up. And it is time for us to show the collective power that we have when we are united together. And to close out our show, I wanted to end once again with the beautiful music of Cesar Castro and Xochitl Flores from Cambalache, but be tuned to the LA County Federation of Labor, to USWW, to Local 11, to the UCLA Labor Center for future editions of Labor's Voice. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate that.